Hey guys, welcome to StudyIQ. My name is Prashant Dhawan, and in this video we shall talk about the Indian Ocean. What's happening in the Indian Ocean? China is clearly trying to increase its influence in the entire region by building harbors, by having more military bases here. Whereas India is trying to balance this with China and trying to increase its own influence in the region. Now, in the quest of doing so, India has recently acquired the rights to dock its naval vessels in Oman's Al Duqm port. So, in this video, we shall analyze this strategic advantage of India. How important is Al Duqm port? What exactly is happening in the Indian Ocean? How are both the countries, India and China, making strides in improving their influence in the entire region, and why is Indian Ocean strategically so important? So a lot of points, we shall discuss all of them one by one. Let's start. And if you're preparing for any examination, you can study at home with StudyIQ's pen drive and tablet courses. Our courses are available for various exams like SSC, Bank, RBI Grade B, UPSC courses are available as well. So all these courses are available on this website that you see, StudyIQ.com, and you can also call these numbers over here for more information. With StudyIQ's courses, you have the luxury of studying from home. You will save a lot of time and your preparation will be top notch. Alright, so I would like to begin this lecture by telling you about the geostrategic importance of the Indian Ocean. Have a look at this beautiful quote by Donald L. Berlin. He has written a lot of literature on the Indian Ocean and the strategic importance of the entire region. He said the Indian Ocean region has become the strategic heartland of the 21st century. In the 20th century, the heartland was Europe and Northeast Asia, but now it has changed. Now the main battleground is the Indian Ocean. He writes, the developments in the Indian Ocean region were contributing to the advent of a less Western-centric and a more multipolar world. So this is the importance of the Indian Ocean. It has actually transformed the world from a very much unipolar world where everything revolved around the Western nations. But now, because of the importance of the Indian Ocean, we have a more multipolar world, or perhaps we are striding towards a more multipolar world. Now, before we start talking about all the important MOUs that are signed, let's just understand the Indian Ocean to begin with. What are the various choke points in the Indian Ocean? What are the important states here? So first of all, we need to know about the Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Malacca, Lombok, and the Sunda Straits. Where are all these straits located? Let's have a look at the map. This is the best way to understand it. So clearly you can see this is the Indian Ocean. It is a huge ocean. It actually covers 20% of Earth's surface, and it stretches from the Arabian Sea to Bay of Bengal to all this water over here near Australia and Mozambique Channel as well. It's a huge ocean. But if I ask you, is the South China Sea part of the Indian Ocean? Will your answer be yes or no? Well, if you think that the South China Sea over here, where I am moving my cursor, it is quite a controversial place these days, a lot of dispute surrounding the ownership of this South China Sea. But you should probably know that the South China Sea is not a part of the Indian Ocean, it is part of the Pacific Ocean. That is why in the year 2000, Indian strategists were very much flabbergasted and surprised. Flabbergasted means surprised. So they were quite surprised when China suddenly started increasing its influence in the Indian Ocean region, because China has always been a Pacific Ocean country, right? It has all of its coastal area near the Pacific Ocean. So why is it now increasing its influence? Well, the answer was very simple, because of all the important choke points and the energy needs of China. Have a look at these countries here. These countries have a lot of energy, don't they? Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, these countries have a lot of oil and natural gas. So most of this gas is exported to countries like India and China through the Strait of Hormuz near Iran over here. Alright, this right here, this is the Strait of Hormuz. Now what exactly is a strait? It's basically a very narrow passage where two land masses are very close to each other, and there's a very narrow passage through which a cargo or a ship can travel. Alright, that's a strait basically. Now you need to know that it is very easy to block a strait. If I tell you to block the entire Indian Ocean region here, then you will probably need hundreds and thousands of ships to make sure nothing goes past here. But if you are given the assignment of blocking a strait, you can do that because you don't really have a lot of area that you have to block. You just have to block a very small area. That is why if this Strait of Hormuz is blocked, then a lot of countries will become energy starved. China in particular has been very cautious about its energy needs because look, most of the times China exports its oil from the Persian Gulf countries like this. So this route, it first crosses the Strait of Hormuz, then the Arabian Sea, then it goes to the Strait of Malacca. So if you remember, we were studying about 4 straits. Strait of Hormuz has been discussed. So this is the Strait of Malacca near Indonesia and Malaysia. Alright, between Malaysia and Indonesia you will see the Strait of Malacca. And then there are 2 more straits over here and here. These straits are named Lombok and Sunda straits. So you can see this country here, this is Indonesia. Indonesia's capital is right here on the Java island. This island here, this is called the Java island, and Indonesia's capital Jakarta is located here. And this map is really good. So you can see this is the Sunda Strait near Jakarta and the Lombok Strait over here. These 2 straits are quite important as well. A lot of cargo, a lot of trade is carried through this. Now coming back to our map. The idea behind increasing influence in the Indian Ocean region is to make sure that no country can block the access of all the cargo, all the energy needs of any particular country. So China wants to safeguard its interests. India wants to make sure that Indian Ocean remains Indian Ocean. It doesn't really turn into a Chinese Ocean. India, of course, rightfully believes that Indian Ocean is its backyard. So now we have a conflict of interests between 2 Asian giants. Now here are some more facts that highlight the significance and importance of the Indian Ocean. First of all, the region contains 1/3 of the world's population. All the countries surrounding the Indian Ocean, they contain 1/3 of the world's population and 25% of Earth's land mass. And 40%, this is quite important, 40% of world's oil and natural gas reserves. Alright, I'm not just talking about oil, I'm talking about natural gas as well. Now, if this isn't important enough for you, you can also look at this fact. The Indian Ocean is also home to the 2 newest nuclear power states, India and Pakistan. And you can say Iran will soon become a nuclear power state as well, because the way they are progressing their robust nuclear program, it is only a matter of time before Iran becomes a nuclear power state as well. So a lot of nuclear power countries over here as well, a lot of important straits, important choke points, important oil and natural gas reserves, a lot of population. Then you also have important trade routes, because since India and China, Indonesia, all these countries are emerging markets, they have a huge demand, they have a huge consumer base over here, so everyone would want to export their goods over here, and that is why the Indian Ocean is now home to a lot of trade as well. Trade worth billions of dollars is conducted through the Indian Ocean trade routes every single day. Now we have to talk about the oil factor as well, because not only countries like India and China are very much reliant on the oil from the Gulf nations, countries like Europe, countries like US, and all the countries in Europe and Japan and all the Southeast Asian countries like Philippines, a lot of other countries, they are very much reliant on the Gulf countries as well and the Strait of Hormuz for all of their oil needs. In his State of the Union address in February 2006, President George Bush, the former president of US that is, said that the nation US was addicted to oil. So that is the importance of oil. And for almost 200 years, if you look back into the history, for almost 200 years, the British exercised predominant military power in the Indian Ocean by establishing bases at key choke points along the critical lines. So of course the British Empire was rich because it had occupied important countries like India, South Africa, but it was also very rich because it had a huge navy and it was controlling all the important choke points that we earlier talked about. And over the years, countries like Russia that have absolutely nothing to do with the Indian Ocean, they are far away from the Indian Ocean, they have always dreamt of having more influence in this ocean because of its importance and all the important choke points that we mentioned earlier. So you can see this is a document from a website of CIA. Now they have presented all these documents for public viewing after all these years. So you can clearly see that USSR Soviet naval forces in the Indian Ocean, the Soviet naval presence in the Indian Ocean began in March 19. So since then, the Soviet ships have been docking in ports of India, Sri Lanka, and Kenya, Somalia, Sri Lanka, and of course Yemen. So all these countries were at that time not all that powerful. They did not have a huge navy. So at that time, countries like Soviet Union, they tried to increase their influence. And in 1979, the Soviets even signed an agreement with Vietnam for a 25-year lease of base at Cam Ranh Bay, that is close to the Strait of Malacca. Now the latest development for India is, you see, India has been trying to balance its influence with China in the Indian Ocean for a few years now. So India recently gained a very important strategic importance when the government of Oman allowed the Indian Navy to dock its naval vessels in the Omanese port Al Duqm. Alright, so this is the name of the port. You can see this is Oman right here. Alright, this is our lovely country India, and this is Oman, and this big mark here, this represents the Al Duqm port, where now the Indian Navy can dock its vessels. And obviously you can see it is very close to the Gwadar port over here, that is part of the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a very important project for China. And recently there were also reports that China might also start building a naval and air base near the Gwadar port. So obviously India had to do something to make sure it had some sort of presence in this area. So this is what the Al Duqm port looks like. And of course this was desperately needed after China started growing its influence in Pakistan, because Pakistan right now is in dire needs of some financial assistance. It will pretty much lease out anything for some help, and China is taking complete advantage of it. Now both India and China are trying their best to control the narrow maritime choke points used by ships traveling to and from the Indian Ocean, including Malacca Strait that we discussed, Strait of Hormuz, and Mozambique Channel. Now where exactly is the Mozambique Channel? It is quite important as well. You can see this part in the Indian Ocean, right? This is the country of Madagascar and this is the country of Mozambique. Between these two countries you will find the Mozambique Channel. A lot of trade and cargo flows through this channel as well, so it is quite important. Now this has involved building up India's naval and air bases in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands as well, which sit at the end of the Malacca Strait. So you can clearly see Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and they are very close to the Malacca Strait. It is a very important choke point, and of course this gives India a very strategic importance in this area. So after making sure India has some influence near the Strait of Malacca, India then eyed the Mozambique Channel, and near Mozambique Channel is the country Seychelles. Seychelles is basically an archipelago, a group of islands, and India has always enjoyed very good relations with Seychelles. So recently in 2018, India signed an MOU with Seychelles where India will get the permission to build military infrastructure on the Assumption Island. Assumption Island of course is a part of Seychelles, but India has now leased this island, and of course this island is quite close to the Mozambique Channel and Djibouti as well. Now Djibouti is a country in Africa and China has built a military base over there as well, so it is quite important. Now look at this right here. This is Seychelles. It is a very small country, just a group of islands, and near Seychelles over here you will see the Assumption Island, and as you can see it is very close to Mozambique Channel here, and it is also relatively close to Djibouti. Djibouti is a country in the Horn of Africa, and a lot of countries like France, Japan, US and China have their military bases here. So in order to counter the growing influence of China in the region, India has also tried to make sure that it has presence not just in Oman but Seychelles as well. Now the buck certainly does not stop there. After Seychelles, India also has an logistics agreement with USA. You see, US has a very important island in the Indian Ocean called the Diego Garcia, and Diego Garcia is actually a part of UK, but the United Kingdom, they allow US to dock their frigates and submarines over here. So in order to have some influence in the Indian Ocean region, Diego Garcia is quite important to US. So because of this logistics agreement, India will now get access to Diego Garcia as well. So you can see this is the Indian Ocean, and in between Indian Ocean. Over here you will find Diego Garcia. It is a very small island, but it is located in the center, in the heart of the Indian Ocean. Alright. Then we also have to see that India recently signed a deal with Singapore that will give Indian Navy access to Changi Naval Base. So you can see this is the article why the new India-Singapore Naval Pact matters. So these things are not really shown in the news a lot, but you need to make sure that you remember these things as well. India is slowly trying to catch up to China, and right now India has a lot of influence all over the Indian Ocean. Now just keep counting with me. Oman, US, Seychelles, Singapore, now one more country, France. Does France have any influence in the Indian Ocean? Of course it does. You can clearly see this part here. Look, near Madagascar you will see two small islands. One is Mauritius, the second one is Reunion Island. Reunion Island is part of France. It is part of overseas territories of France, and you will find a lot of French frigates, French submarines near the Reunion Island, and of course this gives France access to the Indian Ocean as well. So France is a very important player in this region. So India has made a very important logistics exchange agreement with France as well. The agreement has been finalized with France that will allow India access to French military facilities, including key bases in Djibouti on the Red Sea and Reunion Island in southern Indian Ocean. Now, as I told you earlier, in Djibouti is basically a very poor country in the Horn of Africa, and the way that they earn their revenue, the government earns their revenue, is by leasing out their land to major powers around the world, and it sort of serves their purpose. So France has a military base in Djibouti as well, along with China, US and Japan. And now that this logistics exchange agreement has been signed, India will get access to the military bases in Djibouti as well. Now if we look at Oman again, the reason why this MOU that was recently signed during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Oman was so important was because in the joint statement after signing the MOU, the Indian side thanked Omani side for facilitating operational visits by Indian naval ships and aircraft as well as the Indian Air Force to various Omani ports and airports. So after this MOU, India will get access to the Al Duqm port as well, but near Al Duqm port, all the airports will be available for Indian Air Force fighter pilots as well, and that is definitely a huge advantage for India. Then of course, oil storage facilities will be built at Oman as well. So Mr. Modi also informed Oman's ruler about the strategic oil reserve that India plans to build and invited Oman to participate in the project. The Omani side briefed India about its own strategic reserve project Ras Markaz near port of Duqm. Now India's Adani Group recently signed a memorandum of understanding to develop this port as well. Okay, so Adani Group will be playing a very important part in developing this Al Duqm port that will be used by the Indian Navy later on. Now, well, first of all, the defense ties with Oman are very good for India, and secondly, there hasn't really been any chaotic environment in Oman. Oman has a very stable environment there. No new prince has suddenly arrived and all the cousins, they haven't really been thrown in the jail as we have seen in Saudi Arabia. So Oman is relatively very stable and they see long-term potential in their friendship with India. So definitely this is one relationship that will grow and hopefully it will stand the test of time. So this is the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like it if you did indeed like the video, and subscribe to our channel if you already haven't. Thanks for watching. God bless you all.